Week 7. I'm going to start, Marty, with a homecoming king, Wayne Knight from Smyrna. And I saw that come across on Twitter that he was the homecoming king for Smyrna High School. They had that great tradition of the homemade floats down in Smyrna. We live upstate, you and I both, and so we don't get that hometown feel. And you didn't grow up in a hometown. I did grow up in a hometown in New Jersey over in Pennsville. And so that's when I really miss it, when I see that kind of stuff with the town coming together. Milford had a parade this week. It wasn't, I don't believe it was a homecoming parade. It was on Tuesday or Wednesday night. It was just the town of Milford parade. And that was really cool. But Wayne Knight, the homecoming king, he also managed to run for 4 touchdowns on the ground for 935 and 40 yards, and then a 5-yard touchdown catch from Cameron Edge to lead the Eagles to a 34-13 win over St. George's. So my first top performer, and I've got a couple other I want to give also after you give yours, but Wayne Knight, congratulations, the homecoming king. You only get one shot for that. It's got to be a senior, and it's got to be at homecoming in the fall. He's 1 for 1.
That's right. It's good to be king. And I wouldn't say he's going to be the last Knight to achieve that. Also, by the way, just to finish up on that, did you see the new Screaming Eagle that they run out of, that inflatable? I did. That is really cool.
It is.
I looked those things up. They run for about $10,000 to $15,000. So they're not cheap, folks. So
and that's booster money. I don't want people to, people who aren't familiar with it, that doesn't come out of taxpayer money.
No.
That's the football booster money. I know you know that, but I'm just clearing it up so Mike Judy doesn't get emails complaining that he's spending taxpayer money on a blown up. Right. That's all booster money. And boy, there's more support in Smyrna for that football program than there is in any other place in the state.
You're not kidding. We've seen the buses roll up to Delaware Stadium for their championship games. It's a pretty neat sight to see. All right, my player of the week. You know what? I'm going to be a broken record here. I'm going back to St. Elizabeth's. Surprise, surprise. And Kasim Benson, who put on a performance for the ages against St. Andrews on Saturday. Now, there's a box score online. His 8 touchdowns covered 312 yards alone. If you go and read the article by Mike Lang in the dialogue, Mike gives a detailed, basically play-by-play rundown of the game. I have Kasim Benson at over 450 yards for the game. There were 2 drives where he ended up with a 1-yard touchdown run and an 11-yard touchdown run, but he also ran the rest of that 80-yard drive over a number of plays. They just kept giving the ball. So I have him around 450 yards and 8 touchdowns as they demolished St. Andrews 62-28. I will say there's one red flag there for St. Elizabeth's, and that is that St. Andrews torched them through the air in that game. St. Andrews just simply couldn't run the ball.
Yeah.
And that was the difference. But Kasim Benson, boy, he has been a one-man wrecking crew. Basically putting up what for most kids is a good 7 or 8 games rushing with about 450 yards. So Kasim Benson, St. Elizabeth's Jr., still be back next year, folks, is my player of the week.
Same story. I was at the UD game. I was actually tailgating at that point and looking at my phone and following hashtag Delaware DELHS, as I always do on Friday nights and Saturdays. And Mike Lang kept tweeting, Kasim Benson, touchdown again, touchdown again, touchdown again. And then I started thinking, well, why the heck is he still in the game? At this point, why do you still have your star running back in the game? But then, the score, it ended up being a dominating game, 62-28. But late in the third quarter, there was only a 3 touchdown difference.
It got to, I believe, 34-21.
Did it get that close?
Got really close, yeah.
So it made perfect sense. Why would you put him away? And so, just an unbelievable performance. He was actually somebody I had also. And then I want to give a shout out to the 2 Middletown junior running backs, Mikey Pearson and Josh Roberson. Combined, they had nearly 300 yards, and it's not because one of them had 230 yards. It was almost, I forget the exact numbers. It might have been 160 and 110 or something like that. And 5 touchdowns versus St. George's. Marty, sometimes people forget about Middletown because they're so good. Their games have been so lopsided, except the one against Smyrna, and of course the one that they played the out-of-state team. Yep. And so, but these are kids that are performing, and they deserve shout-outs. And it was just an unbelievable performance. And they weren't playing against a team with 1 win. They were playing against St. George's, a tough defensive team, very well coached by John Wilson. And if you had told me that 2 guys were going to rack up over 300 yards of rushing against St. George's, I would have told you there's no way in heck. And that's nothing against St. George's. They're a good defensive team, but that is how good these 2 juniors, Mikey Pearson and Josh Roberson, are. So wanted to give them a shout out. Top performance. And yes, you're the top team, but that doesn't negate anything you do like that. That's just incredible.
I agree. And just to put a further emphasis point on how impressive that was, Braden Davis didn't complete his first pass until the 3rd quarter of that game. So Middletown wasn't able to do anything through the air in that game. If it weren't for these two guys, this might be a totally different ball game. But these guys just ran roughshod. They just basically they wore down St. George's, because this, for almost 2 full quarters, was a really, really good game.
Yep.
Until about 6 minutes remained in the second quarter. So St. George's was right there, but Middletown, as you said, those two guys just pounded the ball down the throats of the Hawk defense, and that was all she wrote. And they ended up really not needing Braden Davis at all, because those two guys did the yeoman's share of the work.
Yeah, so a great job to all of our top performance of the week by a team, a unit, or other. I'm going with the Odessa Ducks. 2016 win over Polytech, and we've already talked about that. They clinched the tournament berth. They're now 3-4 on the season. We can't go back in the record books for most teams that start out fresh, brand new, especially as freshmen and sophomore. I can almost guarantee you no team has gotten 3 wins, because usually those teams don't become varsity teams till at least the junior class is established. And so hats off to head coach Dan Pritchard. They've beat Redline, they beat Seaford, and they beat Sussex Tech. And so just a great job by the Odessa Ducks. My top performance. Happy to see them in the playoffs no matter what happens once they get there and those games start.
Agreed. And because I thought you might have that, I had a second one ready to go. Mine's going to be the DMA defense. We hear all about the DMA offense, and they do a phenomenal job with Aline and Green in the backfield. The defense held St. Mark's to 31 yards in the second half. They picked off 2 passes. They returned one of them 65 yards for a touchdown. I believe it was Kevin Decker who did that. And for the second week in a row, DMA trailed at halftime. They were down 8-7 to Howard last week. They were down 7-6 this week. So this defense has done a phenomenal job keeping them in games until that offense, which for the last 2 weeks has sputtered in the first half, until they got going.